Jake Ramirez stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber with his hands zip-tied behind his back, wearing an expression that suggested he was waiting for a bus rather than receiving an intergalactic criminal sentence. Above him, Chancellor Vren loomed from his elevated podium, all 7 of his eye stalks quivering with bureaucratic indignation. Jake Ramirez of Earth. Vren announced in that peculiar way politicians across the universe speak when they want everyone to know they're very important. You have been found guilty of smuggling contraband substances across 14 star systems, disrupting trade regulations, and, quote, being a consistent pain in my lower digestive tract. You said that last part out loud, Your Honor, Jake pointed out helpfully. Vren's eye stalks stiffened. The council has deliberated extensively on your punishment. Standard imprisonment was deemed insufficient given your repeated escape attempts, your corrupting influence on prison staff, and the incident with the ventilation system that we have all agreed never to discuss again. Jake grinned. The guards love those spicy noodles, though. Silence! Vren's face shifted through 3 colors that probably indicated extreme irritation in his species. Therefore, it is the judgment of this council that you be exiled to Kragath Prime, a Class-12 Deathworld, where you will live out the remainder of your statistically very brief, natural life. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Even the prosecution lawyer, a crystalline being named Hector, looked vaguely uncomfortable. Class-12 Deathworlds were reserved for the absolute worst of the worst. The kind of places where the atmosphere itself was trying to kill you, and the local wildlife had evolved specifically to make that happen faster. Jake, to his credit, just tilted his head. Does it have Wi-Fi? Vren made a sound like a garbage disposal choking on silverware. It has carnivorous flora, acid precipitation, predators with a 98% hunt success rate, seismic instability, and an atmospheric composition that most species would consider, at best, aggressively hostile. Right, but Wi-Fi though? No. Bummer. Jake rocked back on his heels, somehow managing to look casual despite the armed guards flanking him. So what's the record for survival time? I want to know what I'm shooting for. Hector leaned toward her datapad. 47 hours. Set by a Corinthian war criminal with military-grade survival enhancements. Cool. What'd he die from? We are not entirely sure. The retrieval team found only his distress beacon, and what appeared to be a very angry geological formation. Jake nodded thoughtfully. Well, I appreciate the vacation. Honestly, the whole trial thing was getting a bit repetitive. Same questions every day. Terrible catering. You know how it is. Chancellor Vren's eye stalks were now doing something that looked medically concerning. This is not a vacation, human. This is a death sentence with extra steps. You will be dropped onto the most hostile environment we have catalogued, with minimal supplies, and you will perish. Possibly screaming. Probably screaming. And always love your optimism, Vren. Guards, prepare the drop pod. As 2 hulking security officers hauled Jake toward the exit, he called back over his shoulder. Hey, anyone want to start a betting pool? I'm feeling good about 72 hours minimum. I'll even give you odds. The chamber doors sealed behind him with a hydraulic hiss that sounded, appropriately enough, like the universe itself sighing. In the observation deck, several council members were already pulling out their communication devices. By the time Jake was strapped into the drop pod, a completely unofficial and definitely not sanctioned betting pool had accumulated over 40,000 galactic credits. Chancellor Vren placed 5,000 on less than 24 hours. Commander Grolt, the military liaison, went with 36 hours, death by large predator. Tix, the monitoring station operator who'd be tracking Jake's beacon, quietly put 50 credits on, survives a week somehow. Everyone looked at her like she'd grown a second head. But she just shrugged her many shoulders. She'd read the human's file. The incident with the prison noodles had been particularly creative. Inside the pod, Jake felt the launch sequence begin. The acceleration pressed him back into the seat as the vessel shot away from the council station like a bullet from a very bureaucratic gun. Through the small viewport, he watched the stars streak past, then give way to the angry red sphere of Kragath Prime growing larger by the second. From orbit, it looked like Mars had gotten into a fight with a blender and lost. Badly. Well, Jake said to nobody in particular, since the pod's communication system had been deliberately disabled. At least the view's nice. The pod began to shudder as it hit the atmosphere. Warning lights flickered across the control panel, all of them suggesting in various urgent ways that everything was on fire and also possibly exploding. The descent was less controlled re-entry, and more falling with style. Jake closed his eyes and thought about hot sauce, the thing that had gotten him into this mess in the first place. Humanity had discovered faster-than-light travel only to learn that the rest of the galaxy ate food so bland it made hospital cafeteria cooking look adventurous. Jake had simply provided a service, importing Earth spices to species desperate for something, anything, with flavor. Apparently, selling habanero powder to a Centaurian diplomat, who'd specifically requested the spiciest substance known to mankind, counted as assault with a chemical weapon, under galactic law. How was Jake supposed to know their species had approximately 4 functional taste buds and literally no capsaicin tolerance? The pod slammed into the ground hard enough to rattle his teeth. The harness auto-released, and the door blew outward with a bang that echoed across whatever hellscape waited outside. Jake stood, cracked his neck, and stepped out onto Kragath Prime. "All right," he said to the angry red sky. "Let's see what you've got." Thunder rumbled in response. In the distance, something roared. Jake smiled. This was going to be fun. The first thing Jake noticed about Kragath Prime was that it smelled like a gym locker had been left in a swamp for 3 years. The second thing he noticed was that the rain sizzling on his drop pod was eating through the metal. "Oh, that's acid rain, fantastic." He ducked back into the pod and grabbed his supply pack, which according to the label contained 14 days of rations, water purification tablets, 1 emergency beacon, 1 thermal blanket, and 1 multi-tool. Jake unzipped it. Inside were 3 protein bars, a half-empty water bottle, and a flare gun with 2 flares. "They really want me dead, huh?" The roar he'd heard earlier suddenly got a lot closer. And louder. Jake turned to see something that looked like a rhino had angry relations with a bear, and then gone to the gym exclusively to work on its murder muscles. It had 6 legs, each ending in claws the size of kitchen knives, and a head that was mostly teeth. "Skull Crusher," Jake said, remembering the designation from the briefing file he'd skimmed during processing. "Apex Predator. 98% hunt success rate." He watched it paw the ground, building up to a charge, which means 2% of the time, somebody gets away. Think. The creature charged. Jake did not run, mostly because running in 1.8 Earth gravity felt like jogging through peanut butter. Instead, he pulled out the flare gun, aimed it directly at the thing's face, and fired. The flare hit the Skull Crusher right between its eyes and exploded in a burst of magnesium-white light. The creature screamed, a sound like a chainsaw trying to sing opera, and veered hard left, slamming directly into a boulder. It staggered, shook its massive head, and then ran in completely the wrong direction, still half-blind and now thoroughly convinced that Jake was made of angry stars. Jake stood there, flare gun still smoking. Huh. Worked better than expected. He found a cave system about half a mile from the crash site, trudging through the acid rain with his thermal blanket held over his head like a very ineffective umbrella. The cave was dark, damp, and smelled like something had died in it. Then again, so did the entire planet. Jake set up camp just inside the entrance, using the pod's seat cushion as a mattress and arranging his 3 protein bars like they were a 5-star meal. He pulled out his personal tablet, which somehow still had 40% battery, and started recording. "Day 1 on Kragath Prime," he said to the camera, his face illuminated by the tablet's glow. "The tourism board was right. It's got character. By which I mean everything here is characterized by its deep personal desire to kill me." He panned the camera to show the cave. "Accommodations are rustic. 0 stars on Yelp. The local wildlife has terrible social skills. And the weather is, quite literally, corrosive." Outside, lightning cracked across the red sky, followed by thunder that sounded like the planet clearing its throat. "On the plus side," Jake continued, turning the camera back to himself, "I haven't died yet, which statistically speaking puts me in the top percentile of people who visited this place. So, winning." He gave the camera a thumbs up. "If anyone's watching this after I'm dead, please tell Chancellor Vren that his eye stalks look ridiculous and he dresses like a substitute teacher." He ended the recording and settled back against the cave wall. Through the entrance, he could see the acid rain coming down in sheets, glowing faintly in the darkness. Something howled in the distance, a sound that suggested it had opinions about Jake's continued survival, and those opinions were negative. Jake bit into a protein bar. It tasted like cardboard mixed with optimism. 47 hours, he muttered, chewing slowly. Guy lasted 47 hours with military enhancements. He looked around his cave, at his pathetic supplies, at the hostile world outside. "I'm absolutely beating that record out of pure spite." He pulled the thermal blanket around himself and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he'd need to find water, food, and some way to not die. Tonight, he'd settle for not being eaten in his sleep. Outside, something massive moved past the cave entrance. its footsteps shaking small rocks loose from the ceiling. Jake didn't open his eyes. "Not today, buddy. I'm too tired to be prey." Somehow, impossibly, he fell asleep to the sound of acid rain and distant roaring. In orbit, Tix watched Jake's life signs on her monitor. Still alive. Stable heart rate. Either sleeping or unconscious, hard to tell. She glanced at the betting pool on her secondary screen. Jake Ramirez had officially survived 12 hours. Chancellor Vren was already looking nervous. 3 weeks later, Tix stared at her monitors with the expression of someone whose understanding of reality had been gently but firmly drop-kicked into a trash compactor. Jake Ramirez was not only alive, he was thriving. The first video log arrived on day 5. Jake had discovered that the purple fungus growing throughout the cave system, officially classified as deadly toxic spore colonies, was actually edible. More than edible, according to Jake, who'd apparently decided to ferment it. "So it turns out," Jake said to the camera, holding up a crude clay jar, "that if you mix the purple stuff with water and let it sit for 3 days, you get something that tastes like beer had a fight with a mushroom and somehow both won. It's actually pretty good. I'm calling it Deathworld IPA." Tix filed an urgent report. Commander Grolt replied with, "Impossible. That fungus liquefies internal organs." On day 8, Jake sent another log. He was wearing a vest made from skullcrusher hide and grinning like he'd won the lottery. "Update on the local wildlife situation," he announced. "Turns out skullcrushers have terrible depth perception and can't resist chasing thrown objects. I've basically trained 3 of them using rocks and leftover meat scraps. They're like dogs. If dogs weighed 2 tons and had anger management issues. I've named them Fluffy, Princess, and Steve." The camera panned to show 3 massive predators lounging outside his cave like oversized guard dogs. One of them, presumably Steve, was gnawing on a bone the size of a small tree. Tix zoomed in on the footage. Those were definitely skullcrushers. The same species that had a 98% hunt success rate. They were napping. By day 12, Jake had built a treehouse. An actual treehouse, constructed in one of the massive carnivorous plants that dominated the forest. He'd neutralized the digestive enzymes using ash from his fire, creating what he called the galaxy's first Deathworld penthouse. "The view is killer," Jake said, literally standing on top of a plant designed to kill him. "Plus, the acid rain situation is way more manageable up here. I've set up collection barrels. Turns out this stuff is amazing for cleaning. My clothes have never been brighter." He held up a shirt. It was, objectively, very clean. Tix reported this to Grolt, who demanded proof. She sent the full video logs. He watched them in silence, then closed the channel without comment. Day 15 brought the jerky revelation. Jake had figured out how to preserve local fauna meat using salt deposits from the dried lake bed and spices he'd synthesized from various plants. "I'm calling this batch Apocalypse Peppered," Jake said, chewing contemplatively. "It's got a nice kick. Would probably kill most species in the galaxy, but tastes great to me." He paused. "Actually, that's been the theme of this whole experience. Everything here is supposed to be deadly, but from a human perspective, it's just like, aggressively inconvenient." By day 20, Jake had created a pack of what he called murder puppies. Smaller predators about the size of wolves with too many eyes and serrated teeth. They followed him everywhere, occasionally bringing him dead things as presents. "They're very affectionate once you establish dominance," Jake explained, scratching one behind its auditory ridge. The creature made a sound like a garbage disposal purring. "Mostly they just want food and attention. Classic pack behavior." Tix watched the human casually pet a creature classified as extremely dangerous, avoid at all costs. On day 23, Jake recorded a guided tour. He walked through the forest, pointing out totally safe locations, rating various threats on a scale of 1 to 10, and generally treating the Class-12 Deathworld like it was a nature preserve. "Over here we've got the snapvines," he said, gesturing to writhing tentacle plants. "Definitely a 7 out of 10 danger-wise. But if you're quick, you can harvest the seed pods. They taste like spicy almonds. And that clearing there? That's where the acid rain pools up. Great for doing laundry. Terrible for swimming. I learned that one the hard way." He pulled up his sleeve to show a small chemical burn that was already healing. "Oh, and pro tip. The red moss is fine to sleep on, but the blue moss will give you a rash that makes poison ivy look like a gentle suggestion. 5 out of 10. Would not recommend." In the monitoring station, Tix put her head in her hands. Well, the closest equivalent her species had to hands. Commander Grolt's face appeared on her screen. "Status report, sir. The human has been on Kragath Prime for 23 days. He has domesticated multiple apex predators. created alcoholic beverages from toxic fungus, built permanent shelter, established a sustainable food source, and appears to be, and I cannot stress this enough, having fun. Grolt's expression did something complicated. That's not possible. I'm watching it happen, sir. A long pause. Keep monitoring. And Tix? Don't tell the Chancellor yet. Sir. The betting pool. I said don't tell him. The channel closed. Tix looked back at her monitor. Jake was teaching one of the murder puppies to fetch. It kept bringing back things that were still alive and screaming. But points for effort. Her communicator pinged. Another video log. This one titled, Why Kragath Prime is Actually Underrated. A Preliminary Assessment. Tix opened it with a growing sense of dread. This was going to get so much worse. The brochure arrived on day 28 and immediately broke the galactic internet. Kragath Prime. The galaxy's most underrated adventure destination. Read the title. Displayed over a photo of Jake doing a thumbs up in front of a spectacular sunset. In the background, a skull crusher was visible, wearing what appeared to be a flower crown. Tix opened the document with shaking appendages. It was 12 pages long, professionally formatted. There were customer testimonials. Don't believe the hype about Class-12 Deathworlds, the introduction read. Sure, Kragath Prime has a reputation for being extremely fatal and absolutely not suitable for carbon-based life. But that's just marketing from big tourism trying to keep you going to boring resort. Planets. The truth? This place is amazing if you're not a complete wimp about it. The brochure was divided into sections. Activities and attractions featured Skull Crusher Rodeo, acid rain surfing, extreme foraging, and something called volcanic tube spelunking. Under accommodations, Jake had rated his treehouse as 5 stars, rustic charm, occasional murder attempts from the wildlife, would stay again. The dining section praised the local cuisine. Fresh meat daily, exotic fungus beer, and if you're into spicy food, literally everything here will set your mouth on fire. In a good way, probably. But it was the testimonials that made Tix want to scream into the void. Best vacation of my life. Jake R. Human. Earth. The acid rain really opens up your pores. Also, Jake R. I lost 15 pounds and gained 3 loyal murder beasts. 10 out of 10 experience. Still Jake R. There was a frequently asked questions section. Q. Is it safe? A. Define safe. Q. Will I die? A. Probably not if you're careful. Probably. Q. What should I bring? A. Sense of adventure. Basic survival skills. Willingness to make friends with things that have too many teeth. The final page had contact information. Somehow, Jake had set up a booking system. There was even a discount code. Surviving15 for 15% off your first visit. Within 6 hours, the brochure had been shared across 40 star systems. Within 12 hours, it had been viewed 8 million times. By day 29, it was the most downloaded document in the Galactic Network's humor section. Except some people weren't treating it as humor. A adventure tourism company from the Belter colonies sent an inquiry asking about group rates. A Vraxian warrior clan requested information about the rodeo activity. 3 separate individuals from species that prided themselves on being tough had already submitted booking requests. Chancellor Vren's emergency transmission came through at 0300 station time. What? He screamed, all 7 eye stalks rigid with fury. Is this? Tix pulled up the brochure on her screen. Sir, the human has created marketing materials for sale. I can see what he created. Vren's face cycled through colors that Tix had never seen before, possibly colors that didn't exist in nature. He was supposed to die. He was supposed to suffer. He was not supposed to turn our most dangerous penal colony into a vacation destination. Sir, technically we never said he couldn't. Get him off that planet. Now. Immediately. Send an extraction team. Sir, extracting someone from a Class-12 Deathworld requires... I don't care if it requires dancing through a supernova. That human is making the entire Galactic Council look like incompetent fools. Tix wanted to point out that maybe they were incompetent fools if one human with a flare gun and attitude could survive a month on their most dangerous planet. But she valued her job. I'll prep an extraction team, sir. No. Vren's eye stalks suddenly focused with laser precision. You go down there. Personally. You've been monitoring him. You know his patterns. Bring him back alive so we can charge him with, I don't know, illegal tourism promotion or something. Sir, I'm a monitoring station operator, not a field agent. Those are your orders, Tix. Drop pod leaves in 3 hours. Pack appropriately. The channel closed. Tix looked at her screens. all 47 of them showing various camera feeds of Jake Ramirez living his best life on a planet that was supposed to have killed him 27 days ago. In the main feed, he was giving a murder puppy a bath using acid rain and what appeared to be soap he'd made from local plant oils. She pulled up the supply requisition forms and started listing everything she'd need for a trip to a Class-12 Deathworld. Protective suit, breathing apparatus, emergency beacon, weapons, medical supplies, trauma insurance, will, and testament forms. Her communicator pinged. Another video from Jake. Hey everyone, Jake here with exciting news. Based on overwhelming response to the brochure, I'm officially opening Kragath Prime for limited tour groups starting next month. Space is limited because, it's a death world, and I can't be responsible for everyone. But if you're tough enough and sign the very extensive waiver, come on down. First 3 bookings get a free jar of Deathworld IPA. Tix watched the video 3 times. Then she updated her will and started packing. Commander Grolt's message arrived as she was loading survival gear. The betting pool has reached 200,000 credits. Chancellor put 50,000 on you not making it back alive. Thought you should know. Tix stared at the message. Then she added a plasma rifle to her supply list. Tix's drop pod hit Kragath Prime like a meteor with performance anxiety. She stumbled out wearing enough protective gear to survive a supernova, clutching her plasma rifle like a security blanket, and immediately saw the sign. It was hand-carved from skull crusher bone and planted firmly in the ground. Welcome to Camp Kragath. Elevation 2,400 feet. No solicitors. And foreman to lafton.com. An arrow beneath it pointed toward a clearing where smoke rose lazily into the red sky. Tix followed the path, her suit's sensors screaming warnings about atmospheric toxicity, predator proximity, and geological instability. She ignored all of them because they'd been screaming continuously since landing, and frankly, the constant beeping was more annoying than helpful. She found Jake at a barbecue pit, an actual barbecue pit, constructed from rocks and scrap metal, with a grill made from his drop pod's heat shield. He was wearing cargo shorts, a tank top that said, "I survived Kragath Prime and all I got was this lousy t-shirt in hand-painted letters," and flip-flops he'd apparently crafted from skull crusher hide. 3 murder puppies lounged nearby. Fluffy, Princess, and Steve were visible in the background, one of them asleep and snoring like a broken engine. Jake looked up from flipping what appeared to be steaks. "Oh hey, company. You're early. Tours don't start until next month." My. Tix raised her plasma rifle with all 4 arms. "Jake Ramirez, by order of the Galactic Council, you are under arrest for 4. She consulted her datapad. Illegal planetary marketing, unauthorized tourism promotion, public mockery of a government institution, and making Chancellor Vren's eye stalks do that twitchy thing. Jake pointed a spatula at her. "First, those aren't actual crimes. Second, are you hungry? Because I just killed a razorback and these steaks are incredible. Little gamey, but the seasoning really brings it out. I'm not here to eat, I'm here to extract you." "Yeah, but you could do both. When's the last time you had a decent meal?" Tix opened her mouth to argue, then paused. When was the last time she'd had a decent meal? Station food was notoriously awful, mainly nutrient paste with flavor added by a computer's best guess at what food should taste like. "That's irrelevant," she said. But her grip on the rifle loosened slightly. "Look, you flew all the way down here, probably had a terrible landing, your suit's freaking out, and I'm betting Vren didn't even give you hazard pay." Jake flipped a steak. "At least have lunch first. Arresting people is hard work. You should eat." One of the murder puppies approached Tix and sniffed her suit with entirely too many nostrils. She froze. "That's Bitey," Jake said casually. "She's friendly. Mostly. Don't make direct eye contact and you're fine. That creature is classified as extremely dangerous. So's a house cat if you ask the right bird." Jake plated 2 steaks and gestured to a log he'd set up as seating. "Come on. 5 minutes. Then you can arrest me or whatever." Against every regulation, every bit of training, and every survival instinct screaming in her head, Tix sat down. Jake handed her a plate and a fork he'd whittled from wood. She lifted her helmet's face shield and took a bite. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted, right? Jake grinned, sitting across from her with his own plate. "Turns out when you're actually using fresh ingredients instead of rehydrated protein paste, food tastes amazing." "Who knew?" Tix took another bite, then another. She couldn't stop. "So," Jake said, conversationally, "how much trouble am I actually in? Vren wants to charge you with crimes we're still inventing." The brochure went viral. "You've got 3 confirmed bookings for tours. The entire council is furious." "Cool, cool." Jake sipped from a clay cup filled with purple liquid. You want some Deathworld IPA? Fair warning, it's strong. I'm on duty. You're on a planet where the rain is literally acid and the plants want to digest you. I think duty has some flexible boundaries here. He slid a cup toward her. Tix looked at it. Looked at her plasma rifle leaning against the log. Looked at Jake, who was somehow thriving in hell itself while she spent 16 hours a day in a monitoring station eating paste and filing reports. She picked up the cup and drank. It tasted like rebellion mixed with fermented hope. It was spectacular. Here's the thing, Jake said, leaning back. I was supposed to die here. That was the whole point. But I didn't, because humans are weirdly good at not dying in situations where we probably should. And now I'm actually happy. No bureaucracy, no regulations. No Chancellor Vren telling me what I can and cannot sell. Just me, survival, and freedom. That's not how society works, Tix said. But her voice lacked conviction. Yeah, and how's society working for you? When's the last time you did something because you wanted to, not because it was ordered? Tix didn't have an answer. They sat in silence, eating barbecue on a Deathworld while murder puppies played nearby and acid rain began to fall in the distance, creating a sound like applause. I can't just let you stay here, Tix finally said. I know, but I also can't force you to leave. Also know that. Tix finished her beer. This is really good. Right? I'm thinking of bottling it. She stood, picked up her rifle, and looked at Jake for a long moment. You're going to be a problem. Oh, absolutely. The council will send someone else. Let them. I'll make them lunch too. Tix turned toward her drop pod, then paused. For what it's worth, the brochure was funny. Vren's eye stalks really did do the twitchy thing. Jake laughed. Tell him I said hi. As Tix walked away, one of the murder puppies followed her for a few steps, whining softly. Not today, Bitey, she called back. Maybe next visit. Jake raised his cup in salute. Behind him, Steve woke up and yawned, showing approximately 900 teeth. It looked like a smile. Tix's report was filed at 0800 station time, 3 days after her return. Status: extraction failed. Subject deceased. Cause of death: catastrophic encounter with local megafauna. Remains unrecoverable due to hostile conditions. Operator barely escaped with life. Recommend closing case file. She submitted it with steady appendages and didn't blink when Commander Grolt reviewed it in silence. You're certain? He asked. Completely, sir. Grolt studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Unfortunate. Close the case. Chancellor Vren accepted the report with visible relief, all 7 eye stalks finally relaxing for the first time in weeks. The betting pool was dissolved, credits redistributed, and Jake Ramirez was officially declared dead by misadventure on a Class-12 Deathworld. The story should have ended there, except 2 weeks later, 3 ships requested landing clearance on Kragath Prime's coordinates. A Belter adventure junkie, a Vraxian warrior looking to test his mettle, and a wealthy Thanic socialite who was, quote, bored of safe travel. They landed at Camp Kragath, where Jake greeted them at a proper landing pad he'd cleared and marked with signal fires. Welcome, welcome, he called out, wearing his best tour guide smile and a name tag that said, your friendly Deathworld host. The murder puppies sat at attention behind him like the world's most disturbing welcome committee. Hope you all signed the waivers, they're very thorough. Seriously, I spent 3 days on the liability section alone. The Belter adventurer stared at the skull crushers lounging in the background. Those are supposed to be unkillable. Unkillable, sure. Untrainable? That's just quitter talk. Jake clapped his hands together. All right, folks. Ground rules. Don't drink the unpurified water. Don't pet anything with more than 4 rows of teeth. And if you see blue moss, that's a no-touch situation. Red moss is fine. Questions? The Vraxian warrior raised a claw. The brochure mentioned rodeo activities? Oh yeah, we'll get to that. Fair warning, you will fall off. Everyone falls off. It's part of the experience. The Thanic socialite was already recording on her device. This is incredible. My followers are going to lose their minds. As Jake led his first official tour group toward the treehouse accommodations, explaining the acid rain collection system and pointing out various death traps with the enthusiasm of someone describing a petting zoo, something historic happened. Kragath Prime got its first positive review, then its second, then its 10th. By month 2, Jake had a waiting list. By month 3, he'd hired staff 2 other humans who'd heard about his operation and literally begged to work on a Deathworld rather than file reports in an office. By month 6, Camp Kragath had expanded to include 3 separate lodging areas, a dining facility, and what Jake called the danger zone. which was just the regular planet but with slightly more supervision. The Galactic Council maintained that Kragath Prime was closed and Jake Ramirez was dead. Meanwhile, travel vlogs titled "I Survived Kragath Prime and You Won't Believe What Happened" accumulated millions of views. Chancellor Vren developed a twitch. In the monitoring station, Tix watched her screens showing a place that was definitely not occupied by anyone, where nothing was happening, and Jake Ramirez absolutely was not building a swimming pool using a natural hot spring and acid-resistant lining. Her communicator pinged. A message from an unknown source. Job opening. Assistant manager. Ramirez's Extreme Getaway Resort. Competitive pay, hazard bonuses, all the Deathworld IPA you can drink, and zero bureaucracy. Interested? Tix looked at her 47 monitoring screens, her stack of unfinished reports, her half-eaten nutrient-paced dinner. She looked at the resignation form she'd been writing and rewriting for 3 years. She pressed send. 2 weeks later, a new operator took over monitoring station duties. Their first report noted unusual readings from Kragath Prime's surface but couldn't identify the source due to atmospheric interference. Commander Grolt read the report and marked it low priority. On Kragath Prime, Jake stood at the edge of his resort, watching the sunset turn the sky 17 shades of red. Tix stood beside him, now wearing cargo shorts of her own and holding a management datapad that tracked reservations, supply shipments, and safety incidents. "You know Vren's going to figure it out eventually," she said. "Probably." Jake sipped his beer. "But by then, we'll have enough positive reviews and paying customers that shutting us down would be a PR nightmare. Can't arrest someone for successful business development. That's not how laws work. It's how money works, which is basically the same thing." In the distance, a new tour group was arriving. Their ship descended through the acid rain like it was just another inconvenient weather pattern. Because on Kragath Prime, the galaxy's most dangerous Class-12 Deathworld, it was. Jake raised his cup toward the sky. To paradise. Tix clinked her cup against his. To hell with better marketing. Behind them, Steve sneezed, accidentally setting a small bush on fire. Neither of them bothered to put it out. It would burn itself out eventually. Everything did. On Kragath Prime. Except, apparently, humanity's ability to turn a death sentence into a business opportunity. Somewhere in council chambers, Chancellor Vren's eye stalks twitched, and in the Galactic travel forums, another 5-star review appeared. Dangerous? Yes. Life-threatening? Absolutely. Would I recommend? 10 out of 10, best vacation ever. The review was accompanied by a photo of a smiling human riding a skull crusher while wearing a flower crown. The human was definitely not Jake Ramirez, because Jake Ramirez was officially dead. Obviously,